Today's speaker is Professor J.M. Cardo. He is professor and head of the Department of Biopharmaceutics and Pharmaceutical Technology at the Wagner University in France. He worked in the pharmaceutical industry for 15 years and has earned degrees in pharmacy with a PharmD, a master's degree in biopharmaceutical, statistical sciences, and pharmacokinetics, and a doctorate in pharmaceutical sciences from the Wagner University. His research interests include biopharmaceutical development of drugs, in vitro dissolution, and in vivo bioequivalence, and in vitro in vivo correlation. J.M., welcome to today's event. I'll now turn it over to him to begin the presentation.
Thank you, Suzanne. So today we are going to discuss a little bit about IVIVC and how we can use IVIVC in case you fail the pilot VAD study. So after studying, we are going to see how to establish the IVIVC and how to use it to optimize the drug formulation to match the reference formulation partner. And we will see, of course, how to perform everything in Phoenix. I have created a Phoenix template, and you will see in the slide some of the screenshots from this Phoenix template, and you can upload or download it if you prefer from the forums of DataAlign. So, first of all, what is IVIVC? Only to remind you what it is, IVIVC is the link between in vitro data and in vivo performance. Among the in vitro data, that could be in vitro dissolution tests, but also any other tests, and about the in vivo performance. That could be clinical studies, PK parameters, or the full in vivo absorption curve. When you have an IVIVC, you can use it to waive a requirement of in vivo data based on in vitro, and that in this case is going to reduce the number of in vivo studies. Using the right IVIVC, you can use it, of course, to optimize the formulation. The first thing that we must keep in mind is that when you compare in vivo plasma concentration curve, and you have some of them in the right panel of this slide, you have some performances. This performance, if you have the same active ingredient between all the formulations, quality, source, even in batch, if that is optimal, you can say that the difference that you observe are linked with formulations. Or vice versa, if you have the same formulation but 4 sources of API, in this case, the difference that you are going to observe are going to be linked with the API. The key message of this slide is that you cannot modify in the same time the API characteristics and the formulation, so it's going to be very complicated to distinguish between the two. When you want to make an IVIVC, you have 3 levels. Among those levels, you have the level A and the level C, the 2 extremes. The level A that you can see in the left side of this slide is going to link together the person absorbed in vivo and the person absorbed in vitro. Each point that you have and each symbol corresponds to one time point. So, for example, here you have the first time point, which is the lowest one, the next, and so on to the end. And what you observe on the left side of this slide is a level A correlation for one full formulation. At the extreme, you have level C. The level C is the link between any in vitro dissolution parameter and any in vivo PK parameter. For example, the link between the Cmax or the AUC and the time, the quantity dissolved at a certain time or the time needed to dissolve a certain quantity. The level A is said to be the most informative and powerful because you correlate together the full plasma profile and its absorption profile with the full in vitro profile. Why it is important? Because the plasma profile that you have and from which you can extract the absorption curve is going to represent the in vivo release of the drug from the blood form, the in vivo dissolution of your API, and the in vivo absorption or termination of the API. If you are working with a slow release formulation, you can imagine that what you are going to observe as the absorption curve is going to reflect the in vivo release and dissolution of the API. And that you can correlate it with the in vitro dissolution profile. In this example, we are going to use the level A, that means correlate together the full in vivo absorption profile with the full in vitro distribution profile. The data that I use and that you will find in the template were published in Dissolution Technology, which is a pre-access paper. It's going to simulate data of a pilot study with 12 subjects each page. That means you cannot copy the reference formulation. You have 4 formulations, the current formulation, which is the air or reference, and 3 test alternatives, A to C, and all the test alternatives have the same technology. That means has the same release characteristics, not rate, but the same release characteristics and mechanism. They are going to differ by the rate of release. So you have performed an in vitro dissolution test, you have selected the right formulation, and you went in vivo for your pilot study. You have your fit test formulation versus the reference, and unfortunately for you, as an outcome, your B study failed. However, when you have selected the test formulation, you were expecting that one of the 3 must be the right one. That means the initial solution seems to be positive one. So the aim of what you can do now is based on these bad results. How can you develop the best strategy for the dissolution test and then to optimize your formulation? To start the story, you had, before your pilot study, in vitro dissolution result. That is your dissolution prior to the in vivo study. You have 3 test formulations, the A, which is in yellow, which was the first one, the B, which is in purple, which was superimposable to the reference formulation, which is green, and the slow formulation, the C. So you went in vivo. Going in vivo, you were expecting to have the target, that is the B formulation, close to the reference one, and to have, it was not the case, something between the first and the second. In vivo, you observe something like this. You observe that the B formulation, the purple, is not at all equal to the green one, which is the reference formulation, that the B is very close to the A formulation, that means the target formulation is very close to the fast formulation, and that the slow formulation is very slow. That was not at all reflecting what you observed in vitro with your initial dissolution test. So, what can you do? And what are the outcomes? First of all, the first one is that the in vitro dissolution test is not reflecting the in vivo. You don't have the same ranking between the population, and you don't have the B corresponding to the reference population. So we can try to go ahead. Trying to go ahead means that we can try to analyze the data, and we can try to analyze the data using, for example, Phoenix wind only. So we are going first to analyze the plasma concentration curves, and for example, we are going to have a non-compartmental analysis of the data. When you have here the formulation A, B, and C, and you can see it in the table, you have something which is lambda Z, which is the terminal half-life rate. You have the terminal half-life, which is HL lambda Z, the Cmax, AUC last, and AUCO. When you have a look on the data of the AUCs, you can see that it's not exactly the same, but it's the same range. AUCO are all similar. That means you have the same quantity absorbed because you are between 31 and 33 units. But you have something which is very strange. When you have a look on the terminal half-life, you can see that you have a half-life which are going from 2.3 for the reference formulation up to 5.1 to round it for the slowest formulation, formulation C. Increasing of terminal half-life could be arriving in many cases. That could be, first of all, because you have a modification of the elimination processes of the formulation and your drug. That means alteration of the kidney and or liver function to simplify. This is really not really realistic in healthy subjects. The second case is when you have something which is called a flip-flop. A flip-flop, it means that you have during the elimination phase for very slow formulation still some release which is going to contaminate and support the pure elimination. Is that possible here? You can see that the slowest elimination half-life is linked with the slowest release formulation. So that means when you have a Tmax which is increasing, and when you have a drug which is designed to release slowly, you increase your apparent terminal half-life. The most likely is that in this case, your elimination is contaminated by the remaining absorption. And you will have to take that into account in the further calculation. So, if you want to calculate the absorption curve, and you are not going to calculate it using, for example, a deconvolution, but Wagner Nelson, you have to be extremely careful. You have to be careful because when you have a flip-flop, you are going to overestimate the absorption, but in the absorption that you are going to calculate are going to be too fast. When you are using the Wagner Nelson tool, which is tennis, you have something which is very important in the menu of the settings that you have here in the left part of this slide. You have main, dosing, slope selector, and slope. In the slope selector, you will have to be very careful, and in this case, for example, and you can see that just in the bottom of the curve for lambda z calculation method, you may have not to use the best fit, because what it is going to do using the best fit is going to try to fit only the terminal part of the curve. So in this case, if you have this type of flip-flop, you may have to use something which is going to be modifying the terminal half-life. So what would be the outcome in this case? If you use the best fit and you don't modify, you have the results which are here. In the right part of this slide, you have the in vivo plasma curve. You can see that the red is very slow, then you have the purple and the yellow which are almost together, and that you have the green which is very different. Now go on the left part of this slide, which is the result of the Wagner Nelson. You can see that the three-step formulations are almost similar without major difference in the absorption fraction, that is in the rate of absorption. That is not at all reflecting what you have observed in vivo. Why do you have that? Because when you have a bad estimation of the terminal half-life, you overestimate, that is, you calculate the absorption curve using Wagner Nelson as something which is more fast. How to deal with that? As I told you, you may have to work, in this case, with the fitting estimation. That's on the Wagner Nelson. So, this is the way to solve it. When you want to take into account the flip-flop, you must use the real elimination rate constant and not what you observe. So that means not that was overestimated in case of very slow elimination rate. In the slope selector panel, and just in the bottom of the curve, you can select the lambda z calculation method, and you are not going to select it according to parameters, to best fit, but to parameters. Parameters, then you can enter the lambda z that you want, and that is seen by the arrow. And in this case, you are going to enter the lambda z, which is going to correspond to the shorter terminal half-life that you can have. In this case, it was the reference one, and it's going to be 0.3. You do that for the 4 formulations, reference A, B, and C. What will be the results? The results in this case are both ones. You can see that you have still the reference which is unchanged, of course. You can see that in this case, what you have as a look for the reference A, B, and C, for the A, you have something which is rapid. The B is only a little bit slower, and that reflects perfectly that we have observed. You can see on the right part of this slide with the plasma concentration curve, and that the C, which was the slowest formulation, here also on the right panel on the absorption curve is slow. So using this correction for the flip-flop and taking into account in the Wagner Nelson the flip-flop allows you to correct this misestimation if you use the best fit. So now we have what? We have the absorption profiles. Having the absorption profiles, we know how the drug is going to be dissolved in vivo. You can see that the absorption profiles of the three-step formulation have a similar shape, even if they don't have the same rate. Having a similar shape means that they have the same release mechanism in vivo. So we can try now to make an IVIVC. What is the IVIVC in this scope? IVIVC is the red part of this slide on the upper left part. IVIVC try to link together in vitro dissolution with in vivo release. In vitro dissolution is going to reflect the release of the drug and the dissolution of the API in form. That means it's going to be something which is going to reflect the formulation, top part of this slide. Then in vivo, just in the bottom of my IVIVC import, I have my in vivo release, which is going to reflect my in vivo dissolution. In vivo dissolution, which is going to be monitored by the release of the drug from the closed form and the dissolution of the API in vivo. If I have the right in vitro dissolution model, I can link both of them together using a modelization. That means an IVIVC. Based on that, I can link together everything which is linked with my formulation and the characteristic of my formulation, which is going to be linked with my formulation department in my formulation sciences. I need my in vitro dissolution, which will be linked with the analytical department, but I need also the in vivo data for my clinical study and my pilot study in this case. If I have an IVIVC, and that is in the right part of this slide, I can put that in my marketing authorization dossier, regulatory, that can help me to fix limits and also to explain how I can optimize the formulation due to critical quality review. This is QA department and also project management. That means using IVIVC allows me to link all the departments together and to use all my data. So, what I calculate? I calculate my in vivo absorption, which is going to reflect my in vivo release and dissolution. I have in vitro data, and based on that, I will try to link both of them together. I'm going to try to make a relationship between the in vitro and in vivo data. This relationship must be as simple as possible, and the most simple thing that we can have is a linear equation. Type vivo equals the slope times vitro plus intercept. If you have something which is perfectly matching between in vitro and in vivo, the slope is going to be equal to 1 and the intercept to 0. If it's not the case, that means we can have an in vitro which is faster than the in vivo or something different. If I have a nonlinear time scaling, a nonlinear IVIVC, it could be due either because I need a time scaling, my in vitro dissolution after my in vivo input. Is that common? When you have slow release formulation, it could be common. For example, to give the extreme case, I have an implant in my skin for 3 years, and I have a dissolution which is going to be on 3 days. You can see that the dissolution in vitro is going to be faster than the release in vivo. If I have a nonlinear time scaling, I can try nonlinear IVIVC. I can try first of all time scaling. But I may have also to set up a new dissolution method because my dissolution method is not reflecting what I observe in vivo. When I have my equation linking my in vitro to in vivo, I can use it to calculate the target formulation to match the reference. So I will try first to make the IVIVC and to link together what I have in vivo observed, that is the result of my Wagner Nelson, for example, and what I have in vitro with my dissolution method that I had before my first study. The first thing that I have to do is to join together the data that I have from the in vivo and the data from the in vitro. The data for the in vivo is going to be by treatment and time, the relative fraction absorbed from 0 to 1. And my worksheet 2 is going to be my in vitro data. And in my in vitro data, by treatment and time, I'm going to try to match together my solution. For that, I have to be careful to do things, that I will have the same time between the two data sets. And if it is not the case, I will have to interpolate the dissolution data time. And I have, of course, to multiply my absorption by 100, because my dissolution very often is expressed from 0 to 100% dissolved, but my relative fraction absorbed is a fraction is from 0 to 1. That is from 0 to 100 of 1. And I have also to exclude the formulation error using a data wizard, because I want to set up my IVIVC or my own formulation, because I can control the release characteristics through my formulation and process. If I try to make this IVIVC on the data that I have from the previous dissolution test, you can see that it's not working perfectly. It's working for the B and C, but not for the A. You remember the A was the start formulation, but it was in vivo confound with the B. So you can see here it's not working. It's not working either because A, B, A, C has not the same release mechanism, or because my dissolution method is not correct. You remember we discussed about that just before. From the result of the Wagner Nelson, we said that the release mechanisms were similar because in vivo shapes were similar for A, B, and C. So that leads to the conclusion that I don't have the right in vitro dissolution method. So the next step now is going to try to find a best dissolution method. So I am going to try USP 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, what you want. Don't care. You are going to try a various type of media. You are going to try a various type of setting, DPM or rotation speed. But you don't go without any clue of which is going to be the best one. Why? Because you know what is the in vivo release and dissolution, because you have the absorption curves. So you must try now with your new dissolution to find something which is going to result in the same curves, or at least in the same magnitude of difference between the curves. For example, I use something like USP4 because it reflects better my in vivo outcome. My in vivo outcome, you have the absorption curve, and now here I relate together in the right part of this slide my in vivo profile, and in the left part my dissolution curves. You can see that in this new dissolution method, A and B, that is the yellow and the purple, are together, but the red one, the squares, is really lower. So that means it's closer to the in vivo. The next step now, using this new dissolution method, is going to try to link together this new dissolution data with the in vivo data to set up an IVIVC. So I start again with a join, and using the join, I'm going to use the link between the Wagner Nelson results, the in vitro dissolution method, and I am going to see if I have, as before, a good correlation. What I observe? I observe something like this. You can see that there's something which is common for the three formulations. That means my IVIVC is not bad. But it's not a straight line. I put the unity line here to help you to see it. You can see somehow that there's something which is not so bad up to 70 to 80% dissolved, but after I have something which is going a little bit faster in vivo. Why? Because I have a dissolution which is a little bit too fast compared to the in vivo. That means that at the end of my dissolution curve, I am almost at a plateau of quantity dissolved, but I continue to absorb. If I have this type of problem, I need a time scaling. That means I need to implement a relation between the in vivo and in vitro, which is going to be based on the time scaling. That means how the time in vitro is going to correspond to the time in vivo the same quantity dissolved and absorbed. Time scaling means that I am not going to work anymore as I have made before on for the same time the quantity dissolved and absorbed, but I am going to work now on the time needed to have the same quantity absorbed and dissolved. I have made a webinar on that, and you can find it on the Tertera website. Time scaling is a funny game in the sense that I am going now not anymore to work with the person dissolved and person absorbed, but between time to have a person absorbed and time to have a person dissolved. So I am going to have, in this case, a relation which is going to tell me what you observe in vivo at half an hour is going to be observed in vitro, for example, at 25 minutes, 0.45. What you observe in vivo at 1 hour is going to be observed in vitro at 50 minutes, and so on. After time scaling, and you can refer to the webinar on time scaling, I will have a one-to-one relationship because my time scaling allows me to link together the time needed in vitro to have exactly the same result as in vivo. So to do it, I'm going to use the inverse of the release function in vitro or the inverse of the dissolution function of in vitro. You have everything explained in the webinar about time scaling. So the first thing that I have to do if I want to make a time scaling will be, first of all, to try to find the best equation which is going to mimic my in vitro and to modelize my in vitro dissolution. In the Phoenix with non-link, you have a module which is dissolution module. In this dissolution tool, you have various types of dissolution modules, among them the yield, variable, global variable, micro-Banachar, and so on. You can, of course, use something else like linear regression, or even you can use other modules like exponential function. You can use, for example, the variable function. Variable function is a very flexible function which allows you to modelize all the curves which could have an exponential shape up to a sigmoid shape. That depends on the shape function, which is the small d in this equation. If you have a b which is close to 1 or below 1, it's going to be exponential. If you have a b which is really greater than 1, it's going to be sigmoid. So what you are going to have as a result the parameters estimated, which is S infinity corresponding to the quantity dissolved at the infinity, and dt, which is going to correspond to the time to have almost 67% dissolved, and the b, which is my shape factor. You can see that in this case, I have a b equal to 1 as a strict exponential function. So based on that, I'm going now to have the equation of my dissolution curve for A, for B, and for C. I have also my absorption. My absorption, I had it, and I had calculated before using taking the two called the flip-flop in the slide 15 and 16. So I have now to predict my time scaling. That means to calculate which time in vitro is going to correspond to the various percent absorbed. The percent absorbed, I have them for my Wagner Nelson. So what I have to use, the inverse of my dissolution function, that means the inverse of the variable function, put it inside, instead of the quantity dissolved, put it the percent absorbed. And you have it just at the bottom of this slide. The time scaling is equal to minus the Neperian log of minus absorption divided by S infinity plus 1, power of 1 divided by B, multiplied by MDT. That is going to return your time scaling. So, what you can do it not by hand, but you can use data wizard with custom function. And it's going to be a transformation. Transformation from here. Step 1, you select transformation, you have it, you select type of transformation custom. In the custom function, you are going to return time scaling, and the time scaling is going to be what I told you just before. minus log of minus f divided by f infinity plus 1, power of 1 divided by t times mdt. That is going to give you directly the value of your time scaling. To make it, of course, for the three formulation A, B, and C, you are going to filter to remove the blank cells, and then you can have the time scaling. And that is what you have here in the bottom of this slide, the small table, in which you have the parameters of the dissolution, D, F infinity, and dt, the time in vivo, the fraction absorbed from 0 to 1, the absorption from 0 to 100, and then the time scaling. What does that mean? That means when you compare the time and the time scaling, that what I absorb at 0.5 hours is going to be dissolved at 0.35 hours. That means everything, if you prefer to run the value that I absorbed in half an hour, is going to be observed in dissolution at 20 minutes. The next step, I am going to make the mean of all my time scaling for my three formulations, A, B, and C, to have a common time scaling for the three formulations. And that is the black line that you have in the small graph that you have in the left part of this slide. And this black line is the common time scaling. When I have my time scaling, I am going to plot the time in vivo on the x-axis versus the time in vitro on the y-axis. I'm going to put all my formulations, and I am going to see here what is the shape of the common time scaling. You can see here that I have two slopes. One first slope up to 8 hours in vitro and around 6 hours, 8 hours in vivo and around 6 hours in vitro, and then a second slope. But it's common for all the formulations, that means I can use it. When I have my time scaling, it will return an IVIVC, which is going to be a one-to-one relationship between in vivo quantity absorbed and in vitro quantity dissolved. So now I have an IVIVC, which is going to be common for the formulation. With my time scaling, I can, from any type of dissolution curves, I can try to calculate the quantity absorbed because I know how to link together the time in vitro and the time in vivo. But also, I can go the other way around. That is, for any time in vivo, I can predict the dissolution profile that I will have in vitro. But we have now to go a little bit further. Why? Because we have in vivo by absorption for A, B, and C. We have in vivo also the absorption for the reference. And in this case, we can calculate the optimal dissolution curve for the reference, which is going to be calculated using my IVIVC or my time scaling that I establish on my formulation, that means with my technology. That means I can have a target dissolution curve in this case for the reference formulation. You are going to tell me, yes, but I have also, I can have in my USP form new dissolution method the reference and have a dissolution profile. And I will answer you, yes, but this dissolution profile that you will have is going to reflect the reference, but not the reference shape with your technology. And that means you can make mistakes. So when I have it now, because I told you that we can predict the target profile for the reference in vivo, I am going to use my time scaling. My time scaling in this case is going to say, using join with descriptive statistics of the common time scaling versus the Wagner Nelson, taking into account the flip-flop, but only for the reference, I can then calculate everything. I will use Data Wizard to clean my file. That means, first of all, filter to select the air treatment, then column transform to multiply my absorption by 100 to have something which is going to be compatible with my dissolution, then to remove fraction absorbed because I need only the dissolution, and then, for example, to rename the mean time scaling by time. So now I have a file which is going to reflect my in vitro dissolution to match the reference, but with my technology. I will have something like this. This is the green one, is the predicted dissolution. And if I had used the reference with my dissolution method, I will have the red one. You can see that the observed dissolution of the reference was faster. That's what I need to mimic if I want to be able to copy it in vivo. So what can I do now? I have something which is a target dissolution profile. This target dissolution profile, I have to mimic it to be able to have one dissolution, one in vivo profile, which is going to match with the reference formulation. That means I must mimic it to have a test formulation, which is going to be my target formulation, which can have a huge chance to be equivalent in vivo. So the next question now is going to be, can I achieve this target in vitro dissolution with my current technology? And that will be the next point, which is of importance to know if you can do it, yes or no. What is the advantages of Phoenix in this case? As usual, one of the big advantages is that you can trace all the calculations. And if you need to submit it later on in an IVIVC report for the FDA, you have all the log files and all the templates which can be used by the FDA. You enter only the concentration time and the dissolution time profile. You don't need to make any other calculation by hand or using, for example, Excel. That is going to secure all the processes. You use the data wizard, and you can see that the data wizard can offer you a lot of flexibility. However, you must be able to use the data wizard and to program inside. That means to use the right equation, of course. And that means you must learn a little bit mathematics, but also how to program the big data. As a conclusion, what we can say, based on the current simulation performed, is that possible to optimize my formulation? Yes or no? If it's not possible, because I cannot catch the release mechanisms of the reference with my test formulation, maybe I can stop the project. It means also something which is more important. Using the bad results, I was able to develop a better dissolution method. I was also able to define maybe the key parameters of my formulation. And I was also able to analyze all the data of the failed B study. That means you have results in vivo, which were not good, but now you are able to use it and to demonstrate to your management that from the failed B study, you can try to construct a success of the next formulation. This is the end of this talk. If you have any question, you are welcome.
Okay, thank you so much, JM, for the informative presentation. We've got a good number of questions coming in from our audience, which is great. As a reminder, folks, just feel free to enter your questions into the Q&A box, and JM will answer as many questions as we have in the time allotted. So, JM, the first question is, someone would like to know, were the test formulations A, B, and C manufactured using the same ingredients and the same manufacturing principles?
Yeah, they were, in this case, they were made with the same API, and only the formulation was changed between A, B, and C. That means to keep constant, in this case, the release mechanism. If that would not have been the case, you will not be able to create an IVIVC which is going to be robust. To simplify, imagine that A and B would be hydrophilic matrix and C plastic matrix. The release characteristics between the two are not the same, but means you cannot pull the data together. Is that okay?
Yep. Okay, we've got another question. Just one sec. Okay. One of our attendees says, you've shown us how you can deal with flip-flop using Wagner Nelson. Can you achieve the same using numerical deconvolution?
Of course. Of course, you can have exactly the same thing using the numerical deconvolution, but in this case, you are not to deal with a flip-flop. Why? Because as you use the terminal half-life and the curve, for example, of IV or very fast solution, you have no risk to have a flip-flop in this case in your calculation. That is a good advantage and a great advantage, for example, of the numerical deconvolution compared to Wagner Nelson.
Okay. Just one sec. Got lots of questions coming in, which is great. Okay. Someone wants to know, was a intravenous or immediate release formulation available for the UIR?
You can use both of them, and you are not going to calculate exactly the same thing at the end. If you use an IV as UIR, as unit impulse response, you use something which is going to describe the distribution and or elimination processes after injection in the blood. That means when you use it to make a deconvolution, that will return the sum of the release in vivo, dissolution in vivo, and going through the membrane, that means the absorption in vivo. If you use a Peros solution, use something which is going to be in solution and need to be absorbed, then it's going to be distributed and eliminated. That means you include in this case, in the solution, the absorption phase in vivo. But if your Peros solution is very rapid compared to your slow-release formulation, it's not a problem. Because if you use it for a deconvolution, in this case, your deconvolution is going to return the release in vivo and the dissolution in vivo. When you have a modified and slow-release formulation, is going to consider as a limiting factor. That means it's not going to be a problem anyway.
We have a question. Someone wants to know, they say, I have performed a deconvolution that results in the cumulative percentage absorbed greater than 100%. Can you explain why this could have happened and what you would do to solve this issue?
You have two or three possibilities. The first one is because you have not taken into account the difference of doses between the intravenous and the Peros administration. That is one possibility. That means if you use the parameters, for example, of the IV, which is 1 milligram, but the parameters of your Peros is 10 milligram, and you have not entered the doses inside, of course, you are going to have Peros, something which is going to be greater than 1. This is the first case. The second possibility is because you have an intravenous formulation, which is quite old, and at this time, the analytical characteristics and methods are not so great. And you have a problem of lower limit of quantitation, that means a bad estimation of the total quantity which are linked with the IV. That means the IUC of the IV compared to the AUC of the Peros, even corrected by the dose, is not matching together due to lower limit of quantitation. The third case, which is more rare, is something which is called an enterohepatic recycling. That you will never go more than 120–30%, but that's possible. What is enterohepatic recycling is drugs which are eliminated through the bile in the gut after Peros administration. That means you have a drug which is absorbed, go in the liver, then in the blood, and one of the pathways of elimination of this drug is the bile. When the drug is going in the bile as unchanged, it's going back in the intestine, so it would be reabsorbed. In this case, you can have a final quantity which can be greater than 1, but very often in this case, in the absorption profile, you will see a first absorption, a type of plateau, if I can say it this way, then a second peak of absorption, which is going to correspond to the enterohepatic recycling. But that is rare, but existing. In your case, I would think that it's mainly due to either you do not take into account the dose in your deconvolution, or that your IV data are based on a quite old formulation, and in this case, you have a bad estimation of the real terminal elimination and the total elimination.
Hey, Jan, it looks like we've got one final question from the audience. Someone wants to know, can we do the same analysis with data from just two test formulations and not 3?
Yes, of course you can. You can do it, but in this case, the scope of your IVIVC is going to be a little bit different in the sense that you are not going to be able to move between the two extreme formulations. That means the very fast and very slow. In the European guideline about modified release formulation, it clearly says that in some cases, you may have to use only 2 and you have to remove the first formulation. For example, because it's not linked with the same release characteristics. In the US FDA guideline, it's recommended to have, if possible, 3 formulations. What you can do also, if you have 3 test formulations, you can use 2 to establish the IVIVC, and the third one, for example, as an external predictability. But in some cases, you may be able to use only 2 test formulations.
Looks like the questions are still coming in, which is great. We may need a little bit of clarification on this, but I'll ask it. There are many injectable projects. I think they mean injectable drugs. Innovators for these projects have established a level A IVIVC correlation. So when we develop the same formulation, can we concentrate only on the media where the level A correlation was established?
If you have exactly a 1-to-1 copy, you could try if you are sure that you match the formulation, but also the manufacturing process characteristics. That is a part of the problem. But even if you use this dissolution media, for example, a slow-release injectable formulation like PLGA, microspheres, and so on, you have to keep in mind that you cannot use your IVIVC that was established on the originator with one specific dissolution and media to submit without any in vivo data your dossier. But it could be a very good starting point for you to start your development.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, JM, and thank you so much to our audience for a really great discussion. Just make sure we don't have any more questions. Oh, sorry, we have one more. JM, someone asks, do you recommend special considerations for IVIVC for non-oral formulations, for example, subcutaneous formulations?
When you have subcutaneous formulation, that means it could be slow-release injectable formulation. That depends which type of slow-release formulation you have, because you can have a mix of lots of processes in vivo. For example, you can have at the beginning a type of burst, then you can have some diffusion, then some erosion characteristics, which can be a little bit more complicated also by, for example, local inflammation, that means physiological reaction. The first thing that you have to keep in mind, and that was published by some people, is first of all that the burst must not be sometimes overestimated, in the sense that it seems to be a very huge peak, but when you compare the AUC under the burst peak versus the total AUC, you can see that it could be only 5, 10, or 20%, and not more. That means you have not to overestimate it during the dissolution test. The second thing also, in this case, is that the absorption curve is going to reflect, as I told you before, a lot of various phenomena. And you have to be very careful in the fact that if you want to model the absorption, you may have to model it with more than one very single factor, but a combination of more than one factor in your model. But that can be done. If it's something which is very rapid, but not scenarios in this case, you have to be also careful. And the next point, which is also going to be linked with subcutaneous, is going to be if you have a depot formulation, you may have to study in this case, for example, the size of your depot and the type of depot that you have.
Great. Questions keep coming in, which is fabulous. Someone asks, would it be a right choice to opt for IVIVC for highly variable drugs, despite differences in vivo results while the in vitro results may be very consistent?
That depends what you call the highly viable drug. HVD, that means real highly viable drugs, are drugs which have a huge intra-subject viability. That means a huge viability within each subject. If you prefer, Suzanne, I give you today a tablet of a drug. You have an AUC of 100. I give it again tomorrow. You go down to 50. I give it the day after. You go to 200 because you have a huge viability linked, for example, with your metabolism and your heart rate. In this case, that means even with the same formulation within one subject, you can have huge difference, 50% of difference, for example. In this case, making an IVIVC is not anymore a challenge. It's almost impossible because it's going to be very complicated to distinguish the small adjustment that you can make on the formulation from the huge intra-subject variability. So IVIVC for HVD is very complicated and almost impossible.
Okay, wonderful. We had a really great question and answer session there, so thanks everybody so much.